Can you cure IBS permanently? In this video, I'm going to map out how I cured my IBS and went from extremely symptomatic to absolutely zero symptoms and being able to eat anything I want, live life normally, in order to help you map out your journey to get back to where you want to be. So I'm going to say up front, I don't think that diet, medication, or supplements are the best way to approach curing your IBS permanently. I think that the nervous system is the most important root cause of dysregulation of the gut. That being said, after the nervous system is well balanced, I think there's a very strong case to be made for dietary modification and for supplements and perhaps even medication. And all of those played a part in my recovery, and I think all of them were essential. It just has to happen in the right order for you. And obviously, we're all a bit different. So that takes some experimentation and some trial and error. So when looking at diet, there's fundamentals and there's things which are optional. So let's start with the fundamentals. I don't know if any of you have read the book Ultra Processed People. It came out recently by a British doctor, and he researched very deeply all the different effects on your health that come from eating a highly processed diet. And he looked at different indigenous people, for example, who'd been introduced to a highly processed diet and the effect on their health, which came extremely quickly afterwards. He also made a strong connection, which is now in little doubt, between eating a highly processed diet and chronic diseases of all different types, obviously including gut issues. So, he made the point that in the UK, over 60% of what most people eat is highly processed, to the point where they might not even notice that it's highly processed because it's the most readily available food. So if in a supermarket, you're always reaching for instant ready foods, even if they look like healthy options, like maybe hummus or something like that, it's likely to contain sugar. It's likely to contain additives. An easy rule is if it contains anything which you don't recognize and have in your cupboard, if your grandma wouldn't use it, then you shouldn't be using it, at least not on a regular basis. And it probably shouldn't form more than sort of 5% of your diet. It can become a kind of neurosis in itself to absolutely avoid ultra-processed food, because in this day and age, it's nigh on impossible to do so. But, avoid as much as you humanly can. He makes the point in the book that we're effectively being experimented on every single day by companies who have a huge profit incentive in making foods hyper-palatable or really moreish. So the more we eat of those foods, the more money they make. And they literally have panels of people sitting around thinking which additives they can add into foods to make you eat more of them and, raise their profits. So you need to think about that every time you're making selections of food, and try and eat local, eat whole food, and make food from scratch as much as you can. So in summary, this would be avoiding the SAD diet, which is the standard American diet, which is highly processed, lots of things wrapped in plastic from the supermarket with many chemical additives, lots of E numbers, lots of things you don't recognize. I would avoid them as much as possible. The next thing I would do as a fundamental for food is to try to work out with a food diary which things aggravate you. Now, there are things that aggravate a lot of people, for example, soy, corn, wheat, dairy, legumes of all different types, high histamine foods, which you can easily look up. All of those things aggravate different people. So you have to really try them out and see if they aggravate you by keeping quite a detailed diary. And if you do that and you find it does aggravate you, it's best just to cut it out for a while and then reintroduce just a tiny little bit of it at different times of day. Because the time of day you eat food is also quite important, because your digestive enzymes, are available in different quantities at different times of day. So try that before going off of food forever and developing a fear for it, because you can actually create quite a strong neurosis around a specific food and think it's dangerous, basically. And then your brain will start to make that a self-fulfilling prophecy and start reacting to it psychosomatically. So that can be a big problem and can really limit the foodstuffs which you can eat. So if you are in that stage now, I really recommend you to very gradually introduce one food at a time back into your diet. Obviously, if you can do this under medical supervision, so much better. Another absolute fundamental for diet would be not spiking your blood sugar. I don't know if any of you have seen the work of the glucose goddess. She has a big Instagram following. She talks a lot about different food ordering and how that can affect your blood sugar spikes. So basically what you want to do is avoid eating heavy carbohydrate meals or very sugary meals on an empty stomach. So the type of Italian style breakfast of having something sweet with a coffee spikes your blood sugar a lot. Whereas something like eggs, oil, things like that, slow down the digestion of any subsequent carbohydrate you eat. So that means if you eat eggs and oil and I don't know, some high protein, maybe a little bit of meat for breakfast, and then you ate something like, even if you ate a donut, you'd have a significantly lower spike in your blood sugar than if you just ate the donut by itself. So the ideal order to eat these foods in is fibrous veggies and things like that, like salads, and then proteins and fats, and then finally carbohydrates and sugars. Even if there's a very small interval between eating those foods, it can have a significant impact on your blood sugar. And there are reports that people have recovered from all sorts of chronic issues just by doing this very simple, low effort thing. So why not? Especially if you notice yourself getting hangry, i.e., angry and hungry, very soon, like 2 hours after a meal, that's a strong indication that your blood sugar's gone up and then crashed right back down below baseline. And then you desperately need to eat some sugar to get yourself back to feeling just normal. That's an indication that you're not maintaining your blood sugar well and gives you more of a tendency to eat easy, ultra processed, sugary food to make yourself feel okay again, because it also affects your mood quite a lot. So really maintain your blood sugar. That's very important. Then we've got optional things that you can do towards your diet, and restrictive diets are one of those things. The most well evidence of these diets is the low FODMAP diet, which is different types of fermentable carbohydrates, which are present in different quantities in different foods. And limiting these in many people with conditions like IBS will limit their reactivity, like i.e. they won't feel so bloated because their bacteria in their digestive tract won't be feasting on those carbohydrates. So, that is quite a restrictive diet. The idea is that you then go on to a reintroduction phase. It can work quite well for some people. Relatively few people talk about it being a total cure for them, and it certainly wasn't for me. But it can prevent you from burping all the time, feeling bloated and gassy, and generally less miserable. So that's a good step forward. But I see it as symptom management more than a cure in most cases. There's also the GAPS diet. That's much less well evidenced than the low FODMAP diet. It goes under the theory that certain foods are inherently inflammatory and create a thinning of your gut wall or your gut lining, creating a condition called leaky gut. Things like grains and dairy are considered inflammatory foods, and according to the GAPS diet, are to be avoided to allow repair of the digestive tract. If you want more information about the FODMAP or GAPS diet, see in the description below, and you can download a meal plan for either of those diets. The next thing is supplements. And one thing I would be very wary of is any online doctors who are telling you that their supplement is the only way to recover from IBS or digestive issues, or their probiotic or whatever it is, their thing. There's a lot of money to be made in supplements, and a lot of people for this reason will recommend only this supplement and say this absolutely is the thing you need. It may well work for some people, even really well, but that doesn't mean you absolutely need it. And there's a lot of ways to recover without any specific supplement. So do not be taken in by any of those claims. There are too many supplements to go through them all, so I'll just tell you the top 3 that really helped me. There was slippery elm, which is a dark ground root, which comes in a powder generally, and you can mix in water, and is very soothing for the gut. And that just really worked well for my system. Not to say it'll necessarily work for yours, but it's a very low risk thing to try. There's mastic gum, which you chew like a chewing gum. I think it comes from a tree resin in Greece. And for acid reflux or GERD, I find that absolutely spectacular. If I've ever got GERD, if I chew that for a while, it just seems to relieve it. Absolutely wonderful stuff, and apparently very healthy. The other thing is probiotics. The quality and type of probiotics matters massively. So If you just think you can buy any off-the-shelf probiotic from the pharmacy and that's going to have the same effect, not the case. So, you do get what you pay for with probiotics. And also the strain is extremely important. So it might be that you do really well with a single strain of probiotic and not with another one. I've included a small guide to probiotics in the description below if you're interested in learning more, including one I really recommend because I've seen it work for a lot of people. But again, I'm not saying it's the only probiotic which will work. I just say it's one I know is very high quality and worked very well for me. If you don't want to take probiotics as a supplement, you can buy kefir and culture your own yogurt drink. That can be great for a lot of people, not so great for others. So you really have to test it out and go very, very low and slow with probiotics. Take the tiniest amount, like the tip of a spoon, and just the tip of a teaspoon, that is, and just have it once a day with some water. See how you react, and then gradually ease in a tiny bit at a time. Going gung-ho, like Maverick style, can really backfire and then make you think that probiotics are bad for you, when actually what you're experiencing is a die-off reaction. So beware of that. The final supplement, which I would really recommend, is digestive enzymes. That's often hydrochloric acid with things like pepsin, which is a naturally occurring enzyme in your stomach. If you have that slightly before and potentially after a meal as well, that can help you digest your food better by raising your stomach acid. Even if it feels like your acid reflux is caused by excess stomach acid, and sometimes that's what the medical system leads us to believe, and they prescribe us with acid blockers, actually the problem is very often low stomach acid causing food not to be digested properly, to then be fermented by bacteria in the colon and create gas, bloating, and reflux as the gas pushes the acid back up into your esophagus. So that's really, really effective for a lot of people and can be one of the very early kind of root causes in the chain. It's not the first, but it's very high up. So let's take that as an example. What would cause low stomach acid? So the number one thing would be a dysregulated nervous system. And what causes that? Stress and anxiety. So this is the number one thing I think you should do in order to cure IBS permanently. If you do all this other stuff and you still have a dysregulated nervous system, the likelihood is that you're still going to experience symptoms, whether that be digestive symptoms or fatigue or irritability or whatever, because your system is in a permanent state of fight or flight. Now, there are different ways to get yourself back into a place of rest and digest, which is the parasympathetic nervous system, and is when you feel relaxed and your digestion naturally feels like it can get started. We don't have to divert that energy towards survival. We're in a safe place. Our body can put its resources towards digestion. So things like therapy can help. Things like nervous system work, humming, vagus nerve work, relaxation, all help to regulate your nervous system. But what I find as a hypnotherapist is that we have unconscious knots. And what I mean by that is like loops of beliefs which are tied up between our unconscious mind and our body. And I see this all the time because people can release these knots during hypnotherapy sessions, and then suddenly symptoms are not a problem anymore. And I'm not saying necessarily every symptom vanishes, although that can happen. What I'm saying is they'll be significantly reduced and then perhaps clear up on their own without any dietary intervention or any supplements, any medications. So what I would say is nervous system works fantastic. The reason I got into hypnotherapy is because I did all that nervous system work on myself and it worked, but I found like there was something missing. And that thing for me was hypnotherapy. It was able to get under the surface and find those like core beliefs, which are just looping again and again on autopilot in my head and really causing my nervous system to constantly go out of balance. Because you can meditate a lot, hum a lot, stimulate your vagus nerve, do all the good stuff, and still just keep topping up that stress and fight or flight on a daily basis until you eventually stop meditating because you get bored of it and then you're dysregulated again. That's quite common. So I think the absolute root cause is unconscious belief systems. And that's why hypnotherapy is between 75 and 85% effective for the treatment of IBS. I mean, what other possible mechanism would there be for words between two people significantly improving IBS symptoms? The only explanation is the nervous system. specifically the enteric nervous system, which goes from the brain down to the gut. And your gut health then influences your brain, and it becomes a kind of vortex, at which point you're anxious because you have IBS because you're anxious, and what's the way out? So the way out, in my opinion, is to do small steps regularly on as many fronts as possible. As I say, with diet, trying to avoid the standard American diet, eating as much whole food as possible, avoiding your triggers and then reintroducing them so you don't create food neuroses. Trying supplements without trying to find a silver bullet magic supplement, because that in itself is a form of stress. Avoid doing too much research because it's highly stressful. Just choose a course of action and stick to it a little bit every day, calming your nervous system down, and ideally doing hypnotherapy to address those unconscious beliefs, to deal with the real root cause and allow those dietary modifications to take effect, because you can't put the cart before the horse. You absolutely need to make sure that you're not continuously topping up your flight or fight response, because that's going to mean you're restricting your diet, making your life pretty miserable for nothing, because it's all just going to come back afterwards anyway. So I hope that was helpful. That's all the stuff which I did to cure my IBS permanently. There's loads of links below. You can go to my website. You can book in a free call for hypnotherapy, and you can do courses on my website. There's all sorts of stuff. So go there if you're interested in all of this, and you'll definitely learn something new.